Vaping as a mechanism for smoking cessation is now recommended by NICE as the first-line quit method. It's been endorsed by the NHS, and it's formed the backbone of the government's funded and already discussed and indeed boasted about swap to stop scheme for local authorities, and so vaping is very much part of a government policy, it seems to me. And vaping has enabled millions of UK smokers to quit over the last 5 years. And the way that that's happened, and what's revolutionised smoking cessation, was this easy to swap to quit, cheap enough to swap to quit, and that was single-use vapes. So inevitably, with such a revolutionary success story in innovation on the horizon, what did the government do but ban them? So, as I explained at second reading, the ban on single-use vapes, which was brought in actually for environmental reasons, which the Noble Lord Earl, oh God, I can't remember your name, it's gone out of my head. Earl Russell has explained very well in relation to his amendment, are for environmentalist green reasons. Now, that's fair enough, but it was health didn't even come into the ban on single-use vapes. It wasn't even discussed. And I do think that shows that although in some of the discussions it's as though it doesn't matter what freedoms or civil liberties or things happen, the most important thing is always public health. Suddenly, there are things where public health is given secondary consideration to a different political set of priorities. I'm therefore inevitably opposed to Amendment 22, which, even though we've now banned single-use vapes, now intends to try and ban the reusable vapes that are on the market that are actually being sold well. And it's interesting, this amendment, because it's at least honest. Earl Russell has been honest throughout the day, because the heading of his amendment, the word prohibition is used. Absolutely. So actually now you might be delighted to know, because my own personal experience might actually fuel this prohibitionist, which is that I objected to the ban on single-use vapes, and now, of course, because they are no longer able to buy them, I now use reusable vapes. But guess what? I use them as disposable. Because what's happened is that nobody really thought beforehand what was the point of this ban. And so what's happened is, despite huge inconvenience to manufacturers, and by the way, not all manufacturers are tobacco manufacturers of vapes, just as an aside, not that, just to clarify. But anyway, all sorts of independent vape makers and so on have had to completely redesign everything. It's completely disrupted a successful, innovative product. That was a very, very brilliant smoking cessation tool. Actually, we've gone through this big law change, and not a lot has happened. Not very much has happened. Which brings me to my amendment, which is to suggest that the single-use vape ban, which was brought in as a piece of legislation, actually should be assessed before we discuss what we're doing in relation to vaping with this bill. So it's vital that the ban on single-use vapes is subject to a comprehensive impact assessment, its impact on public health, any effects that the ban has had on public health, because it is said that 17%, for example, of people are now, according to the figures, by the way, are purchasing illegal single-use vapes that are still being sold on the black market round where I live, as they say, and in other places too. But also that some people have actually now given up on those vapes because they saw all the kerfuffle about single-use vapes and they reverted back to smoking. So it would be imperative for the government simply to, before this bill is passed, which is my Amendment 145, to review what was the outcome of the single-use vape ban. It happened. I don't think it's made the kind of difference that the government anticipated it would make, but nobody ever talks about it anymore. And if you go into a corner shop or whatever to buy a vape, you have very similar looking products that are reusable, but many people use them as disposable. And even I think that was not quite what the government had in mind. So you should at least consider the outcome.
Will another lady take an
Of course.